You are listening to Down Home. In the late 1950s, the NHL was a sport played entirely by white athletes. But on January 18, 1958, Willie O'Ree became the first black player to skate in an NHL game. It takes a special kind of person to be the first. Someone with courage, determination, and a belief that no barrier is too high to break. O'Ree's debut wasn't just about making history, it was about opening doors for future generations. In this episode, we'll dive into his story and the legacy that he left on his sport. I'm Derek Wise, and on behalf of Jay Jones, welcome to Down Home, the Canadian experience by two black men.
Breaking new ground, breaking new ground, breaking new ground, simple breaking new ground, breaking new ground, breaking new ground, simple breaking new ground, breaking new ground, breaking new ground, simple breaking new ground, breaking new ground, breaking new ground.
All right, so Willie O'Ree.
Yes, Willie O'Ree.
Yeah. So this is sort of just like our version of tipping our hat to Willie O'Ree and his accomplishments, man. We don't, we'll of course give a quick rundown of who he is. Obviously, we don't have him on roster for an interview. That would have been nice, but
That would have been nice.
No, I don't think well, to be honest, we didn't reach out.
No, we did not.
We did not reach out, but we will be just tipping our hat and just kind of talking about him.
Yeah, a good tribute for, Black History Month,
Mm-hmm. So yeah, man, what did you find?
Well, as we know, Willie O'Ree was the first first black player to play in the NHL. He broke the color barrier in January 18th, 1958. He's originally from Fredericton, New Brunswick, comes from a large family of 13 people, 13 children. His father was a civil engineer in New Brunswick, and he started playing hockey kind of like in the vein of Wayne Gretzky at like 3 years old. And then by the age of 5, he was playing in an organized hockey league, and that's where he realized what his passion was. And he played in various leagues, mostly amateur leagues, all through his career. But one of the craziest things is that when he was I think he was 19 or 20, he got hit by an errant puck and was actually blind in 95% of his eye. And the doctor said, you shouldn't be playing, but he hit it. And, and then he went on to have a 30-year career, which is kind of interesting. What are some of the things that stood out for you?
Yeah, definitely all the stuff that you were talking about there. So yeah, like his original junior hockey days were actually spent in Quebec and Ontario.
Mm-hmm.
And straight up, I'll be honest, I'm not a huge hockey fan. So the stuff is interesting because I am a sports fan, of course.
Yeah.
So he was actually signed in the semi-pros with the Quebec Aces.
Mm-hmm.
So that was his in the QHL back in 1955. So that was his introduction to pro hockey. And the call up to the Bruins, interestingly enough, didn't have a lot of fanfare, unlike Jackie Robinson. There was a lot when Jackie Robinson was called up, but I think that had a lot to do with the fact that Jackie Robinson was like a pure athlete. He was the best player on the field.
Yeah.
Where
True.
Willie O'Ree was a solid hockey player, but I don't think anyone would say that he was the best player on the ice at that time.
And also, he made his debut with Boston in Montreal, but the thing about it, he was actually kind of well known around Quebec for playing in the amateur league. So there was no applause, there was no animosity. He actually found that when he played in the States, that's when he was sort of subjected to a lot more racial taunts. But he said that even growing up playing hockey, there was no issue with him being black, even as a young kid. So most of the stuff that he faced was in the States,
Yeah, it was in the States, and I did listen to a couple of his interviews that he did with the CBC, and in the true stereotypical Canadian way, he basically just let a lot of the racial taunts kind of roll off his back.
Yeah,
He told about time, it was his American debut, I guess, in Detroit, and he was in the penalty box, and just the racial stuff was coming down. He was being spit upon,
hmm
and he just kind of ignored it.
yeah,
Like he said, the linesmen and the officials kind of didn't say anything when people
yeah,
were doing that to him, and
yeah,
he said it wasn't even really the players. It was the people in the stands
yeah, yeah.
and in the arena that were kind of going at him in that way. But he said that his older brother kind of said to him, uh, just don't let it get to you. Just go out and play. Sports have always been a mirror for society as a whole, reflecting both its values and its flaws. When you think about it, inclusion in sports has often preceded inclusion in the broader world. Athletes breaking racial barriers on the field or on the ice help pave the way for change far beyond the game itself. But just because it happens first in sports doesn't mean it's easy for those blazing the trail. For Willie O'Ree, stepping onto NHL ice in the 1950s meant facing racial slurs from fans and opponents. He endured prejudice at every turn. But he kept playing, knowing that every shift on the ice challenged the belief that hockey was a sport for only one kind of person. It's easy to celebrate the pioneers in hindsight, but living through that experience was a different reality. O'Ree faced the isolation of being the only black player in a predominantly white league. He couldn't always count on support from teammates or coaches, and there were no diversity initiatives or public campaigns to stand behind him. The abuse wasn't just verbal. There were physical cheap shots on the ice that tested not only his skill, but his resolve to keep going. Yet, despite it all, O'Ree never let the hate define his journey. He focused on his love for the game and his belief that he had every right to play it. In interviews, O'Ree often reflected on the advice his parents gave him. Stay focused, work hard, and never let anyone tell him he didn't belong. That mindset carried through the hardest moments and allowed him to break barriers that had stood for decades. His courage wasn't just about enduring the hostility, it was about pushing forward so that others wouldn't have to face the same walls alone. O'Ree's presence in the NHL wasn't only a personal victory, it was a signal to future generations that the game of hockey could belong to everyone. His example paved the way for other players of color to follow, challenging the idea that hockey was a sport reserved for a select few. And while O'Ree's playing days in the NHL were brief, his legacy has endured for decades. In 2018, he was inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame, not just for what he did on the ice, but for his ongoing work promoting diversity and inclusion in hockey. Through his advocacy, he's continued to break down barriers and ensure that young players from all backgrounds see a place for themselves in the game. The road Willie O'Ree traveled wasn't easy, but by walking it, he changed the sport forever. So, great individual. He did break the color barrier.
Mm-hmm.
And later on in his he did play for, I think he played one season for 45 games.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was 45.
Yeah.
And then he went on to finish his career he was still a pro athlete, but it was not in the NHL level.
Yeah, yeah,
So he finished his career in like the QHL type level.
yeah, and yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, and yeah, his career kind of stayed there. But I mean, the biggest thing is it opened up doors for a lot of players who went on to play in the NHL. There hasn't been many. There's been about 121 total. But I'd like to shed some light real quick on Nova Scotia for having a colored hockey league, which was started in 1895 by actually a pastor and some black intellectuals. and it went on to be pretty successful as far as as the semi-pro league went, and it kind of went on for a while until the First World War. But a lot of sports leagues kind of got disbanded then because a lot of the people and players, whatever, they went on to serve in the First World War. But I just wanted to shed some light on that because it was actually started in Nova Scotia. And actually, I also want to shed light on the first professional hockey player from Nova Scotia. His name was William Bill Riley.
Yeah.
And, he made his debut in Amherst in 1974 with the Washington Capitals. He was the first Black Nova Scotian to play in the NHL. Also, Pokey Reddick was also from Nova Scotia, and the list goes on and on. Today, Evander Kane, Hall of Famer, no doubt, is Jerome Igilna. So Kevin Weeks. There's been a lot of different players. So I just wanted to shed some light on those. I actually made a mistake. Bill Riley didn't start in the colored hockey league, but he did come out of the Maritimes.
Yeah. That league, I don't know if you noticed, but in the fantasy hockey league that we play in, my name is the Royals. And the
nice.
Royals are one of the team that actually came out of I think it was Sackville.
Okay,
I think it is.
Know that.
That's what that's from. And the actual emblem that I have is the emblem of the Royals.
Oh, nice move. I didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
PC wise. But that's a cool tribute, you know?
Yeah, definitely, man. It was just to finish up on Willie O'Ree. He kind of served as a unofficial NHL diversity ambassador towards the later years of his life, which is kind of cool. So he traveled around and talked about different nationalities being in the NHL. The NHL has actually kind of stepped up and recognized him in his later years. Which is really cool.
Yeah, he also got recognized in Boston, and there's they have the tradition with the likes of Larry Bird and different players from different sports leagues. So he did get honored. The 50th anniversary of his debut, which is kind of cool because those things are monumental moments for people of color, especially in a predominantly all white league. You know.
Yeah, true.
You know, that still is like that.
Well, Willie O'Ree, we tip our hat here at Down Home for you here in Black History Month. Blazing a trail, that's not easy, man.
No, not at all. But he stuck to it.
Yeah.
Breaking new ground, breaking new ground, breaking new ground, breaking new ground, breaking new ground.
You have been listening to Down Home. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
Breaking new ground, breaking new ground, breaking new ground, breaking new ground, yeah. On a high plateau, from the one down below to the future of the funk, getting lost in the flow. Contact with the spot magex. Now it's time to flex with the force from the soul, reaching all aspects, getting deep, no time to sleep. As you reach your next phase, laying it all on the line. New trails start to blaze. It's a fire inside, a brand new path, breaking down the sum to one. Feeling free, I just laugh with the joy.
The song Breaking New Ground from The Breakdown.
Like magic prescribed, only to see the perfect blend, like a diamond in the rough, ready to drop a perfect gem. It's time to shine so fine, to see what you find.